What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Processing Blue, where, yes, we process blue for you. I'm Alex Zietlow alongside Mike Kaye, and we cover the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. And Mike, league sources are saying you got a full 5 hours of sleep last week. You're ready to roll.
Erroneous. Erroneous. No, I actually did get some really nice hours of sleep between Saturday and Sunday, although I was woken up by my 2-year-old multiple times during the night. So, I mean, I can't really add it all up, but I'm happy to be here and I'm awake.
Your 2-year-old who also just adores Harrison Ford based on the movie poster right behind you.
He has no choice. We all worship the boat.
Well, we got a great show for y'all today here on Processing Blue. The highlight will be a sit-down interview with newly re-signed special teams ace and outside linebacker Thomas Incoom. That'll come in the middle of the show. But first, Mike, let's bring back the segment Like It, Leave It, or Love It when we talk about these four free agents that got signed after we talked last week. So the four guys: offensive tackle Rasheed Walker, center Luke Fortner, receiver John Metchie the third, and offensive tackle Stone Forsythe. I'm thinking we should start with Rasheed Walker. So, Mike, like it, leave it, love it on the acquisition of Rasheed Walker.
I love it. I think it's a smart way of showing that you understand the market. And clearly Walker's market didn't go as expected for the national media, who were saying that he was the best left tackle option. And he was, because he was a full-time left tackle for 3 years. You know what you're getting with him. This is not like a try it out basis. He is probably what you would consider the pass protection equivalent of Ike Ekwonu. If you were to say Ike Ekwonu is a plus run blocker and kind of a average to subpar pass protector, Walker's kind of the opposite of that. Walker's a pretty good pass protector, had a rough playoff game heading into free agency, which might have cost him. He also had a gun possession charge that he got at LaGuardia Airport for not having permits for that in New York. I don't think that that's had a major impact on him, but it is something that's out there. But yeah, Walker's set up to where if Ekwonu doesn't come back or come up to form and he starts all 17 games or 15 games or what have you, he could potentially cash in after doing well in a scheme where Joe Gilbert is going to be his one-on-one coach. And I think Walker's the type of guy that you buy short term, and then if he does well, go for it. And it's been one of their many 1-year deals, which 1-year deals aren't like abnormal in free agency, but it's the bulk of the 1-year deals that they've done it and who they've chosen to do them with. Now they can go BPA in the first round because really offensive tackle was an eyesore and a half. They had an $18 million anchor or anvil or whatever you want to call it on their cap with Ike Ekwonu, who we don't know if he's going to be able to play this year or play at the level that he had been. And I think they really took care of a major need there to where they don't need a press. What about you? What do you think?
Well, that need was accentuated by the fact that Josh Nijman was announced a sudden retirement over his Instagram page. I think a couple days prior to Rasheed Walker signing. So that was a quite a big deal. I remember there was just discussion of after, and we'll get to Stone Forsythe in a second, but there was discussion of what the Panthers were going to do at tackle and there was this idea of, oh, should they be panicking? And that was prior to Josh's retirement. So this signing couldn't have come at a better time. And it was kind of, I don't know if you were surprised, but I was thoroughly surprised that the Panthers could get such a good prove it deal at that point in free agency. Do you want to move on to center Luke Fortner?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. I'm going to say for Rasheed Walker, I'm going to say love it as well. Center Luke Fortner, I'll go first. I'm just going to be really quick about this. I love this one as well. He is, this was a massive need for the Panthers, obviously, after Cade Mays left in free agency. He went to the Detroit Lions. Obviously, I think the Panthers got a pretty good deal for him as well. And there's still a lot of question marks around the interior offensive line. What are they going to do with Eddie Christensen? What are they going to do with Austin Corbett? I think Luke's signing was a really good thing. Mike, what do you think? What do you think specifically about Luke that fits this Panthers offensive line?
Well, he's a little bit more athletic in space. I think similar to Walker being the anti Iquanu or like the inverse Iquanu, I think Fortner's kind of the inverse version of Cade Mays. Cade Mays was basically a tackle playing center, really good pass blocker, could anchor really well. Not so much a great guy in space. And when you have outside zone, mid zone principles, it's important to have a center who can get out in space and block downfield. And I think Fortner does that a little bit better. Another really good fit, kind of the more modern centers, those Howard Mudd esque guys like Jason Kelsey and Ryan Khalil, who can kind of get downfield and wreak havoc in like the screen game and so on. But I think where the Panthers are at, it made a lot of sense. I really like it. I don't know that I love it, just because he's kind of had an up and down career. He started his first 2 seasons, then got benched for an entire third year, then got traded to the Saints, where he played a lot better in New Orleans down the stretch. I think he's a good fit. I still would draft a center at some point in April, but I really like it. I think he is another guy that if he plays really well, you sign him up long term, you feel good about it.
This next one is interesting. Receiver John Metchie the third. Last offseason, pretty much the main storyline throughout the offseason was what are the Panthers going to do with that receiving room? They ended up, I believe, signing 7 at the outset and then having to figure things out once Adam Thielen got traded and they had to bring back Hunter Renfrow and all these things. Well, the Panthers decided to go out and get another receiver, a guy who has experience with Bryce Young and John Metchie the third. And I'm curious, Mike, what do you think about the Panthers going out and getting him?
I would look at this as a more youthful Hunter Renfrow.
Mm,
So Mechie is a guy who is a really good route runner, similar to Renfro. He is better off in the slot and working underneath routes and getting yards after the catch. He will be better probably than Renfro was at this point in his career at getting yards after the catch. He and Bryce had a really explosive season together in 2021. They have a relationship. I think that helps him. It also helps Bryce. There are questions about Xavier Legette, and if they feel like they are going to use T Mac and Jalen Coker more on the outside, they need a reliable slot receiver. Coker's typically going to be in there, but if they decide to move things around or get creative with their play calling strategy, then having a slot receiver you can count on is what Metchie can be. Now he's going to have to compete with Jimmy Horn Jr. and Bryson Tremaine, who has some big slot to him. I like it. I mean, I think it's one of those moves where I don't think you can be wrong on. You can only really be right or it didn't work out. You know what I mean? Like taking that swing, given his experience with Bryce Young, given his price tag, which I believe is under $2 million, like saves you from maybe having to draft another guy. I still don't think it'll stop them from doing that, knowing the way this team operates. Um, since Canales and Morgan took power, they've drafted 3 wide receivers, 2 in the first round, and signed Coker. So it's like they lean on this wide receiver friendly offensive coaching staff, and so I think Metchie can really kind of develop if he gets some sort. We talked about it last week with Jaelan Phillips, where it was just like constantly turbulent. He was getting all different coaches, moved around. There were injuries. Metchie's kind of been in a similar situation where he got traded twice last year. Like this is a guy that if he gets some normalcy and some comfort, I think he can excel. I wasn't a huge fan of him coming into the draft. He went about where I thought he would on day 2, but I mean, his story's pretty incredible. Overcoming leukemia to play again. He's going to be a fun story to watch throughout the summer.
yeah, absolutely. Finally, offensive tackle Stone Forsythe. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Mike. Forsythe?
Hmm?
Yeah, that's the name of the county in North Carolina, at least. He allowed 11 sacks last year, according to Pro Football Focus, 24 hurries. He's going to be left tackle, maybe insurance for left tackle for Ike Ekwonu with his timetable and all these things. Rasheed Walker also in the mix as well. Mike, what'd you think about the Stone Forsythe acquisition?
Well, I think I had some stone foresight in saying that I didn't think that he was going to be the first man up at left tackle. They had a plan. Like everything I all the conversations that I had, they planned on doing something. They did try to sign Josh Nyman to a deal. He ended up retiring. Then you go to the next best thing, which ironically was another former Packers tackle
Mhm.
uh, in Rasheed Walker. I think Brent Tillis and Dan Morgan deserve a lot of credit for playing the market there. And then they've always gone into this offseason knowing that they needed to draft offensive linemen, especially because of how much they've invested in there. I think they got two peach deals in Walker and Fortner to add to that extremely expensive offensive line room. And so I didn't think they were going to come away from the first two rounds without a tackle. So I didn't think the panic was necessary to have. I mean, I think people were making a boulder out of a rock, so to speak. Like, I mean, it was just take some pebbles of wisdom here. I think Stone Forsythe is a guy that they view as swing tackle competition. He's a lot like Caleb on Chason. Everybody complained about him, was like, why is he on this team? Had like kind of a okay training camp. They ended up cutting him because he wasn't necessarily a fit, according to, the guys that made that final decision. He then goes on to have two pretty good back-to-back years. Forsythe, if he's the swing tackle while Ekwonu gets ready to come back, I don't know that's the end of the world. I mean, he's got a lot of experience. He's got a background um, with Isaac and Canales, and those are the type of things you take. I mean, I gave it a D plus. Like, I really like. I don't know why you had to rush to sign the guy, but they also only had two tackles under contract heading into free agency, and one of them has a ruptured Achilles or had a ruptured Achilles. So I still expect them to draft a tackle relatively early. If they draft a guy in the third round, he beats out Stone Forsythe. Like, uh, you know, you can't take that for granted.
Jeez Louise,
Long,
dude.
long pause. Well, you didn't laugh at. I mean, you didn't. I didn't get you to crack on the other ones. I just think like I think that I think like from their perspective, this is guys do this all the time where like a guy will sign to a pretty cheap deal, but he's literally that there for auxiliary purposes. So if Forsyth isn't an active extra tackle on the roster during the year, I don't think you should blow a gasket over it. I think this is one of those things where it was like there's a clear need here. There's a need for bodies and they got to add one. And I think the plan here is they want to have a team that they could field even before the draft so that they can do whatever they need to do when it comes time for April. And I think they've largely done that because of a lot of the resignings that they've had, which we'll talk about on the other half of the Incooming interview with Thomas Incoom.
Yeah, that is a great spot to stop as any. All right, let's kick it to our interview with Panthers outside linebacker Thomas Incoom.
And we are joined by Panthers outside linebacker slash special teams ace Thomas Incoom. Thomas, welcome back to Carolina. Pretty
I appreciate y'all.
pretty cool way to experience your first foray into free agency. I'm just curious, right off the bat, what made you want to return?
I mean, it's, home, coming back to the same scheme, still with the same special team coaches, basically the same coaching staff, man. It makes you just more relaxed and, you know the scheme was going on and it gives you the ability to play fast, you know what I'm saying?
Thomas, I actually wanted to ask about the coaches that you brought up. Now that you brought him up, 16. You had 16 special teams tackles last year. It's the most on the team. What was it that made you so productive? Was it a function of playing for Tracy Smith, or what went into all that?
I mean, just playing off each other, feeding off each other and just going out there with relentless energy, just their attitude of being the ace on the team, being the dog, and trying to make every play that comes to you, and doing your job also. And Tracy did a pretty good job of putting everybody in the right positions to make plays, and when the plays coming to you, just make what come to you.
Thomas, you've been a guy who's brought a lot of energy. You've brought a lot to the locker room. I always see you talking to guys, coaching them up, or just swapping information. There have been quite a few guys that have re-signed here. It's not
Yeah.
unusual for that to happen in free agency, but it's a lot of guys. Why do you think guys want to be part of this culture longer than last year's team?
It was a chemistry, man. This year I felt like we had a pretty good chemistry in the locker room, on and off the field. You know what I'm saying? Guys helping each other, exchanging information. What I see on film, what they see on film. How can we help each other? Play fast and have less thinking on the field. And you could tell the energy in the locker room was just different. And guys definitely want to be part of was what we building in Carolina. So I mean, I'm just glad we was able to bring a lot of pieces back.
Can you go into a little bit more detail about what you mean by the energy was different? I think from the outside, the energy was obviously different because the Panthers won more and y'all
Yeah.
had these electric games in Bank of America Stadium. I immediately go to that first Rams game, which was just the
Mhm.
sight to behold. But
Yeah.
inside the locker room, what made the energy different?
I mean, a lot of positive energy, whatever the game is won or the game is being lost, we come in just, hey, what are the stuff we can build on? What are the stuff, we did wrong and just correct, simple stuff. Everybody just helping each other, just positive feedback, negative feedback, everybody just taking it in and just, not trying to make nothing negative out of anything, but just this what you did wrong, this what you did right, this how you need to build on, this how you need to, don't do this again. And it just able to exchange feedback from each other. It's not a lot of places that do that. And just the laugh, the good moments we have in the locker room, it never feels like coming to work. It always feels like, man, I'm just about to go have fun with the boys. And coming to the locker room is like a sense of relief for everybody that comes to the locker room. And you could tell it carried on through the first day of camp, through the last day of the season. And, everybody want to be part of the locker room like that.
Speaking about that, obviously you guys signed Jalen Phillips. I know Alex wants to ask about that
Yeah.
soon, but I wanted to ask you
Mhm.
kind of about Nick Scorton and his
Mhm.
development, like seeing him come in. You guys are locker room neighbors. Like,
Yeah.
what does he bring to the fold? What's his upside?
His energy, man. That dude never shows lack of energy. Comes in the same dude every day. Just happy, just ready to play ball, ready to learn, and ready to just take feedbacks and also give feedbacks. As a young guy coming in the league, he does a lot of film study. Him and Princely did do a lot of film study. We exchange information in the meeting room and in the locker room, and he brings a lot to the table for this team. And we just glad to have him.
Thomas, I did want to ask about Jalen Phillips. Um,
Yeah.
we saw that like at least a couple players on Twitter were really excited when the Panthers went out and signed him to that
Hmm.
massive deal. Among them, Mike Jackson was like throwing gifts all across the Twitter sphere, which was really
Yeah.
fun. And I'm curious, when the Panthers did officially sign Jalen, what was your
Hmm.
reaction? And also, like, what's your first impressions of him as a player?
I mean, great dude. Obviously the film speak for itself. He adds a lot of value to our room, and when they signed him, I was excited. But I mean, obviously, Mike, know I'm not a social media person, so I'm not gonna be on social media just posting and stuff like that. But I was excited, and obviously, I excited for him to whatever the journey he's been through and how to overcome everything he's been through. I was just happy for him, and see him going and growing in his career. So I mean, we excited to have him here in Carolina.
How much do you oh, sorry, Mike, just a quick follow-up on that. How much do you think he can impact this defense immediately?
Oh, a lot. I mean, he's a playmaker, man. Like he bring dominance atmosphere to the field, and we played him when he was in Miami last year when they came over here. Obviously watching him play on the field, he's a great dude, and we excited to bring to have the type of talent he has to in our room and in this defense.
Thomas, I know we bill you as a special teams ace, but also Alex
Yeah.
and I were there every day in training camp. We saw you winning
Mhm.
matchups one on one from a pass rush standpoint. What is it coming into this offseason? Obviously, you bring back Travis, you bring back you bring back all
Mhm.
these guys, and then add Jalen. What do you want to add to your game? But also, where do you see your upside as a player on defense?
I mean, just, come back and keep polishing, man. Just polish your craft, polish my pass rush, get strong in the weight room, able to, defend and set the run better. Just overall, I'm not looking in to see, who's in the room, who they got. At the end of the day, you got to be a better player for yourself and for the team. So you come in, you got to perfect your craft, and that's what I'm out doing every day. So coming into this season, my upside, and obviously keep being explosive, keep being, the speed guy everybody thinks about. Get stronger, get faster, get smart in the playbook, get, more film steady in, and whatever they want me to do and to add to the team, I'm willing to do it.
You and I have talked a lot about like this offseason, sticking around town. You like being here, you like focusing on
Yep.
training. But Tracy once told us you lead the nation and want to when it comes to special teams. And I think
Hmm.
it's not necessarily rare in the NFL, but it is something that you
Hmm.
can build on and build a reputation on. Like, as you look at yourself entering your fourth year in the league, coming off,
Hmm.
career highs in games played, special teams tackles, and everything like that, what is your outlook for next season?
Just build off what I did last year. Last year was kind of like scratching the surface level. This year, it's more in the tank, and I'm ready to, show everybody else. Basically, I mean, not even show everybody else, just show everybody last year was not a fluke, especially what the special team unit did, and we all coming back to be better than what we did last year, and also keep leading in the NFL and, return, kickoff, punt. I want the team to lead every phase. That's my goal. You know what I'm saying? We just gonna make it happen. And this year we're not gonna play with one to we will. We got to change our mindset that we will.
Awesome. Well, Thomas, thanks for joining us today. We
Appreciate you,
really
Mike.
appreciate you coming on the nationally recognized Processing Blue podcast.
Yeah, appreciate you, Mike. Appreciate you, Alex. Appreciate you for having me, man. And keep pounding.
And we're back. That was a great sit down with Thomas. Really appreciate him taking the time. Mike, anything you want to, I don't know, punctuate about the interview?
Yeah, what's interesting about Thomas is that he was one of four restricted free agents who ended up re-signing for less than the restricted tender, and the restricted tender has become very restrictive for both teams and players. What I think is interesting, and people forget this, is restricted tenders are not guaranteed. So even if a guy signs it, yeah, he might be making $3.8 million, but if he gets cut during training camp, he's not making anything. And all these guys got guarantees, at least in portions of their deals. Those other guys are friend of the podcast, the governor, James Mitchell, LeBrian Ray, and then Claude the God Charles, spelled Gawd, because it would be blasphemous to call it anything else. Call him anything else. And then you see all these other guys re-signing, and I think this is a larger strategy for the Panthers, where yes, they want to contend, yes, they want to build this culture, but they also want to have flexibility in future years. And I think that's essentially what's bought them this flexibility, in that, yeah, they made two big splashes in Devin Lloyd and Jaelan Phillips. We talked about all that type of stuff. But like, I think from their perspective, the Panthers are in like a really good spot where going into 2027, we're in 2026 right now, going into 2027, they are able to potentially capitalize on a huge season from Bryce Young. They might be able to extend Jalen Coker then. They can figure out a lot of different stuff. If Jaelan Phillips doesn't work out, they've got a massive decision to make, and there is risk there. We cannot kid gloves this contract. I expect him to excel just because of who he is and his fit here. But, other than the Phillips contract, there are no real gambles here. And they have done all of this stuff. They have 70 players or 71 players under contract. And they've done this while upgrading outside linebacker and inside linebacker. Dan Morgan told me in January that they needed all this depth that they could at outside linebacker because injuries happen. They bring back Travis Gibson on a 1-year deal. They bring back Thomas Incoom on a 1-year deal. They signed Jaelan Phillips. Nick Scorton's evolving. They really like what Pat Jones can offer if he's healthy. Princely Uman Nealon is another guy that they're really excited about. Having that depth, and then also to go over to inside linebacker, you bring back Claude and Cherilus, you sign Devin Lloyd. They are building something here, and we'll talk about the 1-year deals, but they've been able to do all this while restructuring one contract and cutting another. That's it. So like when people are like, well, why is the cap still low? Blah, blah, blah. It's low on paper, but the mechanisms are all there because Brant Tillis is doing such a good job of managing the risk reward and all these different scenarios. And I think this is played out this offseason where you feel much better about this defense than you did a week ago. You probably feel a little bit better about the offense too in some facets, and they can move on now to the draft.
I like the point that you brought up earlier about the team is essentially building it during free agency to where they can field a competitive team in 2026 even before the draft begins, which is just a really great place to be if you're Dan Morgan and the rest of this front office. I wanted to talk about the re-signings that the Panthers did in week 1 of free agency, aka including the negotiating period and all these things. Um, they made 10 re-signings. I was thinking that we could just pick 2 that we really like, and then we can go kinda back and forth. Mike, do you wanna start with, um, your first re-signing from week 1 of free agency that really piqued your interest?
Thomas Incoom. I mean,
Okay,
I
let's
think
start there.
look, I think this is not a very good special teams unit from a talent perspective, but he was the one guy where you're saying to yourself, yeah, they need to do something here because he is a legitimate NFL special teams ace. And I think what we've seen and heard about him from coaches, he really buys in. He's a good fit for the locker room. He does all this stuff. And this isn't just blowing smoke, but I'll tell you, he is always engaged in practice. Training camp was eye opening to me. Like, I was like, oh, well, Thomas Incoom might have a shot. But like, I mean, you and I watched it. We would stand next to each other and he would just, I mean, the Browns joint practice, he owned, like, straight up
Mhm.
owned that practice. And so I think he's a guy that they like. He's cheap, but he's effective. And he's a guy who can grow with the rest of this room. You want 5 to 6 guys at outside linebacker. And I think that's impressive. What about you?
Well, I agree with everything you said about Thomas. I'm gonna start pretty simply and go with David Moore. I think that I think there were a lot of there was a lot of discourse after the Panthers went out and re-signed David Moore. Obviously, it's becoming another crowded wide receiver room. Um, David Moore is simply Dave Canales' guy. He was valuable to this Panthers locker room even when he was out for most of the year last year after dislocating his elbow and tearing ligaments in his elbow. He only played 4 games, and those were the first 4. And he got hurt on the first play of the 4th game against the New England Patriots. He only caught 1 pass, was only targeted once, and yet every receiver would either be asked about David Moore or would bring him up unprompted about how he's kind of become a mentor to them or a coach on the field for them. Um, so I think his resigning is interesting. Uh, Whether he makes the team or like I don't necessarily know if he'd want to stay on as practice squad guy because he is an NFL veteran and all these things, and he has told us that he has aspirations to be a coach one day, maybe not in the NFL, but in some capacity. So he definitely has a vision for life after football. But I think just re-signing him is an interesting and important part of stabilizing the wide receiver room. And he's Dave Canales' guy. He told us on this podcast last year that he does not want to play for another coach throughout the rest of his NFL career. And at least as far as 2026 goes, that is going to be the truth. It's going to be the truth. So that's my guy. Do you have anything to add on David Moore before you go on to your next guy?
Just that he's a friend of the pod. I think another guy that is probably not going to make headlines, but I thought Travis Gibson played really, really well
Mm.
after being acquired in late October. He's a guy who does a lot of the dirty work. He can play on special teams. He was the only guy that got a sack against the Rams in the playoff game. I think he was just a good cog in the machine. I think he's good for competition. He's a guy who did not want to go anywhere. He's a guy who embraced the culture as well. Speaking to him the last couple of weeks of the season, and I think he's a guy that, if there's an injury in training camp, he's a guy that you feel good about on the depth chart and within the rotation. I also think he gives you some flexibility, especially if you want to wait a little while to draft an edge rusher if the board falls a certain way. So Gibson's a veteran presence who I think you know what you're getting there, and I think he can play early downs and on special teams.
Cool. My last guy is Nick Scott, safety Nick Scott, who re-signed with the Panthers on a 1-year deal this weekend. Played all 18 games, started all 18 games at safety for the Panthers. Over 1,000 defensive snaps, which is pretty much 100% of the defensive snaps. I think he was out a little bit for in the Falcons game because they were up by so much. Something like 98% of all defensive snaps were played by Nick Scott. His numbers weren't necessarily gaudy. 1 interception, 3 pass deflections, 1 fumble recovery, but he did clean up a lot of messes when it come in the second layer of the Panthers defense, particularly in the run game. 111 combined tackles. And he's just a leader in that room. His ability to communicate, his ability to connect all parts of the defense is important. He has substantial experience. He won a Super Bowl in Los Angeles. I know we've talked about that for several years, but it's still true. It's still relevant. And a lot of people were on him after that first week, particularly from that missed tackle. All these Panther fans will know exactly which play I'm talking about. The missed tackle that sprung Travis Etienne for a 70-plus yard run that really flipped the game on its head. He improved. And the first of that play was difficult to begin with, but he proved time and time again that he can be a reliable tackler, and he can bring a physicality to the defensive backfield, which is what the Panthers needed. So I think re-signing him was smart, particularly as Lathan Ransom continues to show what he can do. So the Panthers will probably need to invest in safety in the later rounds of the NFL draft, but for now, Nick Scott proved that he's a starting caliber safety, and it was worth it. I think it was worth it.
Yeah, and I think 2 other guys to add into that group, Isaiah Simmons and Claude Charles, guys that have defensive upside, but are also count on special teams. Isaiah Simmons is playing safety for the Panthers. Claude Charles is playing inside linebacker. I think they feel good about what they've been able to retain depth-wise.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And lastly, wanted to mention that on late Monday, the Panthers re-signed their veteran punter Sam Martin to a 2-year deal. NFL Network has reported that his contract is worth up to $5 million. I like this re-signing a lot. He made it clear after the season that he wanted to stay in Carolina, and frankly, Sam deserved it. He punted 56 times in the regular season. Nearly half of those landed inside the 20-yard line, and 19.6% of them landed within the 10. And then this is his favorite stat that he shared with me after the season. Since week 9, the Panthers only allowed 34 punt return yards. In 4 of those games, they didn't allow any punt return yards at all. So that obviously has a lot to do with the entire punt coverage unit, but Sam is a big reason why as well. Now the specialist trio of Ryan Fitzgerald, J.J. Jansen, and Martin are back together in 2026 to hopefully build on another good year of special teams. Mike, all right, so that's pretty much everything that we got planned for today. Anything you want to shout out before we get on out of here?
Yeah, I wanted to shout out Zach Dennis, our producer, and Scott Fowler, our co-host. We were recognized by the Associated Press sports editors this past week as a top 10 podcast nationally. And, I know you see us all the time, but we wanted to thank Scott and Zach for all they do for this podcast. Zach makes it as listenable as it can be with the 2 of us hosting. And Scott, when he's been on, has been terrific. So on top of that, we also want to thank you guys, the listener, if you're still listening, because you're the reason why we do the podcast. So Alex, congrats to you as well. Been a pretty cool week getting that. I mean, it was a nice way to kind of end a really long free agency day, but I didn't want to not acknowledge that the Processing Blue podcast for you is a nationally recognized program in our second full year of doing this. So be care.
Well, Mike, you're the man, and with that, we'll get on out of here. Thanks, as always, for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike Kaye and myself and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching processing blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all of your Panthers needs. Mike, stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
And like a Thomas Incoom tackle on special teams, that's a wrap.